Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Welcome to this month's Friends You Keep. As motivational speaker Jim Rohn says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And at Air and Wellness, we really believe that to create joy, health, and happiness, we must choose to spend time with those who make us feel energized and inspired, which is why today we have Nicole with us. So Nicole Silveira, I said that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is a 28-year-old Winter Olympian who recently made history at Beijing 2022 Games as Brazil's first skeleton athlete. In the past several years, Nicole has taken the skeleton world by storm with 6 gold and 2 bronze medals in her first 9 races, securing her spot in the Winter Games. Additionally, Nicole won Brazil's prestigious Best Athlete of the Year in 2019 and 2021. And since Brazil is an emerging nation in the sport of skeleton, resources are scarce, and any training season, Nicole can spend 6 to 8 months living out of a suitcase, traveling through North America, Europe, Russia, and Asia. However, it is a sacrifice she is willing to make to follow her passion and create history, sliding 140 kilometers, let's think that sink in, per hour, head first down a mountain on a sheet of ice. So thank you, Nicole, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Been kind of back and forth trying to secure it because you're traveling so much for your sport that you love. So I really appreciate you taking time with me. And congratulations. I mean, I've been watching what you've been doing kind of on Instagram, and it's just been like, holy smokes, and Facebook, and just seeing how you've just really has taken the skeleton world by storm. So it's really neat to be able to have you here today and kind of talk about what you're up to. So
yeah, it's been quite the journey so far. So I'm happy to be able to share a little bit with you.
Yeah. So can you first explain to everybody who doesn't know what is the skeleton? What is the skeleton?
Yeah, for sure. Skeleton, I usually start off, do you know skeleton? And usually the answer is no. So then I go, do you know bobsled? And 50-50 is yes, and 50-50 is no. And then the next step I go to is, have you ever watched Cool Runnings? And usually the answer is yes after that. But basically, Cool Runnings is what bobsled was. And it was actually filmed here in Calgary. Yeah. It was based on the Jamaican bobsled team. So skeleton is essentially we go down the same track, except in skeleton, it's just us. So it's an individual sport. And we go head first down the track. So basically from the beginning, we sprint about, I'd say anywhere between 30 to 40, 50 meters on ice. And we push the sled with one hand, run on the other side of it, and then jump on the sled again, head first, and then go down the track. Every track is a little bit different. They're spread all over the world. And then, you drive. The answer, or the questions I always get is, how do you steer it? So we usually steer it anywhere with our heads, shoulders, knees, and toes. So head being the least amount of steering you do, and toes being the most. Obviously it's a speed sport, so the faster you go, the shorter the time, the best result you'll get. And so the less contact we have with the ice, the faster you'll go, because there's less friction. So toes being the hardest steer we do, because we actually make contact with the ice. Whereas sometimes you're going so fast that just a look to the left or to the right is enough to change the angle of your sled. So that's how we steer. And then the next question is usually, how do you, what are your brakes? And we actually don't have brakes on our sled. We use our toes as our brake. So once you cross the finish line, every track goes on an uphill. So that helps us slow down, and then we drag our toes as well. But for skeleton, bobsled has brakes. But in skeleton, like I said, we use our toes, and our shoes actually have a harder toe cap so that it protects.
They must. I can't imagine.
Yeah, they still get ruined by dragging them on the ice, but they also put, depending on how fast the ice is going, they'll put like foam pads at the end so that we jam into these foam pads to force us to stop. That's pretty much the gist of it. And the faster you go, the
better the time.
The better the time. Exactly.
I showed Michaela last night a video because she didn't know what skeleton was. She's like, "What's skeleton?" Which is so, and I even mentioned to another girlfriend, she's like, "Skeleton." I'm like, "Remember the one that's like bobsled, but without the little into the." Oh my God, that's crazy. And I showed Michaela, her face was like, "Oh my God, like that's so fast. It must be so scary." So I can't imagine how terrifying it must have been. I mean, unless you really like speeds head first, the first time you did it. So how did you start competing? Like, I know, you did fitness and you've done powerlifting. I believe that was the other one, right? You've done some other sports,
weightlifting, yeah.
soccer, yeah, throughout the years. So how did it lead to skeleton? How did that all kind of transpire?
I feel like skeleton is such, like, everyone has such an individual sport or story coming into the sport, because it is not many people know it.
Yeah.
But for me, I used to work at Popeyes, as you know.
Yeah.
And when I was working there, I had an old teammate of mine come shopping, and he found out I was Brazilian after we were talking for a bit. And he goes, well, the Brazilian bobsled team is looking for a new member. This was in summer of 2017. And they said, we have one more season, and this is the Olympic qualifying season for Pyeongchang in 2018. So long story short, I agreed to try out for this team and ended up doing a season of bobsled. So I did a season of bobsled in 2017-18. We fell short of qualifying. And then my federation said, well, we've never had a skeleton athlete before. And because I'm living in Calgary, at the time we had a functional track here. They said, well, why don't you give it a try and see if that's what you want to do? And I've discovered over the last few years that I am someone who likes to have control. So for me, when I was in bobsled, I was the brake woman. So that's the person that sits in the back. And essentially you run in the beginning, and then you sit in the sled. The pilot does all the driving. Your head is down. You don't see anything that's going on until the end, when the pilot yells brake, and then you sit up and you pull the brake. So zero control over the actual steering. And I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I knew I wanted to go back into sliding sports. So the next season I wanted to either go back as a bobsled pilot or go into skeleton. And when the federation asked if I wanted to do skeleton, I was like, well, decision is made. So then my first time was actually here in Calgary, and it was, they used to have public sessions. So just anyone could go and try it out. They don't throw you off the top. You go a little bit lower, so that you literally just have to, if you don't have enough speed, you just lay there and nothing goes wrong. So yeah, the first couple, it was 2 runs I think we had as the public session. And the first 2 runs I was like, I don't know if this is for me, like it's a little scary. But then I just kept trying it, and the more control I actually got and the more results I started to get, I really, really loved it. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it.
And does Calgary still have a full, like, is that where you practice? Obviously, they still have a full run you can use, or you kind of
Unfortunately not, no. Yeah, unfortunately that was my first, I only got 1 year of the Calgary track, which was beautiful because I would work and then I'd come home and be able to train as well. But they've since closed. They had to do some maintenance stuff and then never reopen. It's
okay.
A little bit political, but yeah, unfortunately it's closed right now. I am able to train out of COP. There is a facility we call Ice House. Mm-hmm. So that's where you learn to push the sled. So it's like, I would say, I don't even know, maybe 80, 100 meter track where you have the first 30 meter to push, and then you lay on the sled, and then the sled just goes back up, and then you come back down just to practice the actual push itself. You can't actually steer the sled or anything like that. And by the way, if Michaela wants to try it out, she's more than welcome to join us this summer. We do have push sessions that we get public to come and give it a try, and it's super fun.
And so yeah. You see, it goes up to 140 kilometers an hour. So that's pretty fast. And you don't really have any protect, like you have but you have a nice little outfit, a nice, tight little outfit to obviously keep going fast, and your shoes, as you mentioned, and you just have a helmet. And do you ever feel terrified, or no, you're just like, it's all good? Or is it that, sometimes I know before I get up and I'm doing a public talk or whatnot, I have like the butterflies. I'm like, and then once I'm in it, I'm good and I'm golden. I can do it. So is it kind of like that where you're?
For sure. Yeah, depending again on the track, we go anywhere between 120 to 100. The fastest I've been is 140, just under 144 kilometers an hour. And it was here in Whistler. That's considered one of the fastest track in the world. Okay. But yeah, if I were to say that I don't get nervous or I don't get scared every run, that'd be a lie. And I think that goes for the whole World Cup circuit. All the Olympic athletes say the same thing. It's hard because skeleton is a funny sport, because we don't really train for skeleton for 6 months of the year. So when the off season between March and October, we're basically track and field athletes where we're practicing, we're training for the 30-meter sprint, and that's it. Like all tracks are closed, so we can't slide. And then from October to March, then we're actually sliding. And so it's tricky because we, like I said, we get 6 months off our sled where we're not actually practicing that part. So especially in the beginning of the year and the beginning of the season, like the first few runs are always a little bit nerve-wracking. Some tracks are a lot more technical and a lot more challenging than others. And depending whether you haven't been there for a few years or whatever, it for sure is a little scary the first couple runs. I would say the first run is usually the most scary one. But yeah, it totally depends on your comfort level with the track and how often you've been there and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for sure, all of us do get a little bit nervous sometimes. And then also at times we walk beside the track or even on the ice before sliding to have a look at the corners and stuff. And if we see that the ice is shiny and clear and it looks like it's fast, sometimes that'll be a little nerve-wracking too, to be standing on the top of the track and seeing it all. But
well, that was actually leading up to my next question about off season. So obviously off season you can't do that, so you basically are just doing track and field, obviously lifting too. So I've watched some, obviously with the Instagrams, you're obviously working out. And nutrition, I guess the nutrition component is you want to just stay, because you want to stay lean, obviously, to a certain degree. I don't think I've seen, hate to say it, I don't see any, chubbier. That sounds very nice, but you just don't, everybody seems to be quite svelte. You have to be certain to get down the hill, I would assume, to be kind of that aerodynamic. So I imagine nutrition has to really play a part as well, which, coming from your background, also the fact of what you do for a job would help, I'm assuming, to have that. So is
for
it
sure. I think, well, like I said, skeleton is a funny sport because we're training like track athletes in the summer. But at the same time, skeleton is also different because we're running bent over. So we don't necessarily need to train exactly like a track and field athlete where they're sprinting upright the whole time. So it's a weird balance that we have to find. But yeah, basically our training is like plyometric fast twitch stuff. So we're doing a lot of power cleans, power snatches, jumps, a lot of hamstring focus, and then obviously a lot of sprinting itself. And then nutrition wise,
there's no weight qualifications, is there? Like there's not.
Yeah.
Oh, is there weight qualifications?
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. With nutrition, we have to watch because for women, we have a max weight of 102 kilos combined. So that's all our equipment plus our body weight.
So how much does that?
Yeah.
Pound wise, sorry, because I'm like
times 2.2. So
I'm
two.
Okay. So
something.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, I can quickly pull up a calculator. I can't do math.
I use family myself. I'm not a math person. Okay. So okay, I didn't know that. So you have to weigh a certain amount too. And I imagine, and obviously, I mean, muscle weighs more than fat, but still you still want to stay. That would be really, you'd have to really kind of dial it in, I guess, too, sometimes.
Well, it's a fine balance because skeleton is also a gravity sport. So gravity is helping you go down the track, right? So the heavier you are, the faster you'll go. But
I would think the lighter you were, the faster you go for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, no. So 102 kilos, you want to get as close to 102 kilos as you can, but you can't be anything over because you're disqualified. So how they do this is every race minus the world champs and Olympics are based on two combined runs. So you go down the track once and that's your time. And then you get a break in between. Everyone goes down once, you get a little break, and then you go down the second time. And then that second time gets combined with your first time. But between those runs, so after your first run is when they will weigh you at the finish. So when you come down, you go straight to a scale. And then they weigh you. And if you're 1 gram over the 102 kilos, then you're disqualified. So you want to be as close to 102 kilos as you can without obviously going over. And that's just because of gravity. Again, the heavier you are, the faster you'll go. So then you have to find that balance because you're pushing a sled. So let's say your body weight is lighter on the lighter side. That means you're going to be pushing a heavier sled. which could mean it's harder for you to run fast.
Yeah.
And so you have to find that balance between having a light or heavy body weight with a light or heavy sled. So that's very personal, goes from person to person. Some people prefer being lighter and pushing a heavier sled. Some people prefer being a little bit heavier and pushing or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been at a games or where you've seen somebody be disqualified? Does it happen often, or is it not? It doesn't happen very often because people are so hyper aware of it.
It doesn't happen often because people are, I mean, it's a big deal if you're disqualified.
Yeah. No kidding.
Especially Olympic season where you need every point you can get. And then obviously Olympics, you have to be very careful because I think they give you like 5 or 10 minutes if you go over to figure something out. So sometimes there's a lot of snow packed up in your sled for whatever reason, or in your shoes or something, and you can try and get rid of that. But you do have to go in with all of your equipment. But yeah, it does happen. It's not often.
For the skeleton themselves. So do you use one skeleton all the time, and that's kind of like your prized that is yours? And then what are the costs of something like a skeleton? Like, what do they end up? Because I can imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely our prized possession because it isn't cheap. A sled will go anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 euros.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite expensive. So we do baby it. Everyone has their own. Well, in the World Cup level, everyone has their own. In the lower levels, sometimes people rent them or whatever. But yeah, so everyone, I mean, I have my own, and then every season, like something new will come up, material wise. So I'll get a new sled or modify my old sled or something of the sort. But yeah, there's about, I would say 3 or 4 different models of sleds, but within a sled itself, you can change up some of the bars, or usually what we play with is our runners is what we call it, which is the steel that goes underneath, or the blades, I guess
the skates of the sled.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the runner itself it's a round steel. And then on the back end, there is 2 grooves. So there's a different cut on every runner has a different cut. And so the cut is based on the ice conditions or what the athlete is comfortable with, stuff like that. So,
and that's kind of like, so if you go to, let's say you go to one run and you realize I need a different blade, you can switch the blades out. So then you have to have accessible blades that you can use all the time, right? Is that
exactly? Yeah. Yeah. During a race, you are not allowed to. So you have to make your decision before you race of what runner cut you want to use. But during training sessions, you're allowed to kind of change it and play with it and see what's faster, what you prefer, what you don't prefer. And those are also pricey. So they're each around 600 euros each pair. And so athletes will have 10s, 20s, a lot of runners to play with.
And do you have a favorite run that you've done? Is there one you can think of? Because you've been everywhere, kind of all over the world. So there's a one you've been on that you're like, this is so much fun. And I don't know what would be more fun. Is it the twists and turns, the speeds, or what garners that? But is there one you have? And why?
For sure. So we say every athlete has a home track is what we call it. So it's the track that you have the most runs on and you have most access to. And for me, it's Whistler. And that one's just super fun for me because I've been there so much and I do quite well there, and you get quite a bit of speed. So it's always fun to go down the track and then look at your timesheets and you see the speeds you've gone. So that's definitely my favorite track. There isn't really a track I don't like, but I seem to do better in the most technical ones that you actually feel the pressure in the corners and you feel the speed. So there's another one in Altenburg, which is in Germany.
Okay.
That one I like as well. There used to be one in Königssee, which is also in Germany, but there was, what was it, 2 years ago with the floods, the hill just came tumbling down and the track was gone. So they're talking about renovating it or rebuilding it, but I think they have to figure some stuff out first.
Where are the next Olympics?
They are in Italy.
Oh, okay. Actually, I lost your picture of you.
Oh.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
You're
Okay.
back.
So the next ones are in Italy. So when do you start going over to Italy to practice? Have you been over there yet? Have you experienced that track or not?
No. So how the Olympics work, or the Olympic track works, is you're supposed to have, so 2 years before the games, the track is supposed to host like an
open house,
a race.
Go check it out.
Pretty much, yeah. You get a certain number of runs that you're allowed to have before the Olympic season. So that should be coming up, not this season, but next season. With China and COVID, we ended up delaying it. So we were supposed to go in February, I guess 2 years ago now, 2 years ago now, but we didn't go till October of last season. But yeah, we will only be able to go, hopefully, if the track is ready, next season.
Okay.
Or 2 seasons from now. And then we don't get to go again until the games. So that's kind of where.
What year is this happening? Sorry, I'm just trying to.
26.
26. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of where being a host country pays off, because obviously you get as many runs as you want on there. And then every other nation just gets the pre-Olympic testing event is what we call it. And then the Olympics. So,
well, since we're on the Olympics, so I looked up, so you placed 13th, is that correct? Is that the right number?
That's right, yeah.
So that's pretty amazing if you think about, because you started doing this, what year did you tell me you started doing it?
2018 I started.
To be 2018, and here you are 2022, to be 13th like in the world, that's pretty incredible. That's pretty awesome. So tell me about Beijing. I mean, I can imagine your experience, because you obviously would have talked to other athletes who'd been there, and with COVID, I've heard, we hear kind of on the news, it was a very different experience. Some people didn't have a very good time. Some people were kind of disgruntled about the situations they had to live in. But what was your experience for you? What did you find? And also, I guess, is there I imagine the whole thing would really be a highlight, but is there a highlight for you of the games?
Yeah, the games were, overall, I had a lot of fun in it. There were a lot of limitations because of COVID. I don't know if being my first games, it was good or bad, that I didn't know what, I guess, normal games would have been like. Yeah. So then hopefully Italy will be a lot better. Yeah. But yeah, there were a lot of restrictions. We were tested every day. We had to wear masks all the time. The cafeteria had what were they, like plexiglass pretty much around every seat. We weren't allowed out of the village unless you were transported through their own transportation. So we couldn't tour China at all. Yeah, it was a little sad, and my federation didn't allow us to go to the opening ceremonies because COVID. Really? So there were a lot of experiences that were cut short, let's just say. Brazil only had 11 athletes representing at the Winter Games. So they were very cautious of going to this big event where you're just crowded around until it's time to walk the stage. Yeah. So we hosted our own little opening ceremony in the village. I posted a video on Instagram too. And I would say that was a highlight. It was fun, and I actually got to, we played the opening song, and so there's actually some emotion attached to that, and it was fun to pretend like we were there. Closing ceremony. So China recommended that, highly suggested that every athlete after the competition left within 48 hours of competing. So I left right away, didn't go to closing ceremony either. So a lot of things we missed out on. But yeah, I mean, the experience itself of sliding, the facility was incredible. Like, China did what we thought China would do, where everything was, like, the infrastructure was amazing. That track was fully covered, which is not normal. We had an indoor warm or heated warm-up area, which also we warm up outside in parking lots and hope that they were able to shovel the snow off. So that to have a heated training area or warm up area was amazing. The area itself, like it felt like we were in a Mulan movie, like in the middle of the mountains. That area actually doesn't snow very often. So for the alpine ski, because our village was, what did we have? Bobsled, skeleton, luge. And then we had alpine ski as well. And the whole alpine ski hill was just artificial snow. So like they really invested into the facility and infrastructure. And they really tried to give us the experiences that we could, being mindful that they were very strict on COVID. But yeah, it was a really cool experience. And obviously racing was, I would say, a highlight. And being in that atmosphere, we had no fans, no audience. So that was a little bit different. I don't know if that was good for me, just less pressure, I guess, less noise. I don't know. But yeah, it was quite the experience.
It's going to be great going to Italy, because it's hopefully, I mean, fingers crossed. And I think we're kind of there where now you'll be able to enjoy the opening ceremony. And we'd be probably the, extra sweet for you to have those moments that you didn't
For sure
before,
I think I would definitely put my foot down a little harder if they banned me from going to Italy games.
Yeah, no kidding. And then you also have won, because I want to mention this, Brazil's best athlete of the year in 2019 and 2021. So do you still have family that lives down there? And were they, because I've seen videos of clips of you down there too, and kind of you went after the games. You went there right after the game, right? Is that where you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And what that meant to you, and how the community, I imagine, especially as young, Brazilian little girls looking up to you, just being like, holy smokes, she did it. Right. So that must be such a neat experience, to be such an influence and inspiration to so many young Brazilian girls and women everywhere, but, especially there.
Yeah, it was honestly super cool. And I never expected it to be so big, I guess. I do still have family in Brazil. So here, when we moved to Canada, it was just me, my parents, and my two brothers. Everyone else is still back home in Brazil. So yeah, I went to Brazil after the games. They brought me for some PR and interviews and that kind of stuff. And it was, well, even before I went, just the support on social media was insane. Like I didn't expect it at all. They were hashtagging, and it was like, there was on Twitter, and I guess there were millions of comments and reposts and stuff. And it was super cool to experience, a little overwhelming. But yeah, when I went back to Brazil, it was really, I guess, eye-opening that of the impact that it had. They said that these games had the biggest viewing of any other Winter Olympic Games. They actually, so our biggest sports channel is Globo, is what we call it, and they normally don't stop their normal programming to play the games. And I guess mid-show, they stopped it to show my race. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, that increased obviously the viewing, and it was awesome to be able to just expose skeleton to Brazilians, because if people don't know it in Canada, they definitely don't know it in Brazil. So yeah, it was cool. It's kind of, I'm the face of skeleton now, so it's nice to try and be able to find new athletes and support it in that way. But yeah, it was kind of surreal at times. I when I had a couple days to go to the beach, I'd be walking down the beach and people would be calling my name to take photos.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's so
yeah, cool. It was super cool, and like super cool experience. And Brazilians are very they're very patriotic, let's say, when it comes to sports, especially soccer.
Yeah.
And so I went on this podcast, and I guess it's one of their biggest sports podcasts. And they had fans call in and like send videos and stuff, and you can just feel, and they were cheering me on as if it was a soccer match almost. So it was super cool to see the passion that Brazilians do have for sport. Yeah, so it was super surreal and overwhelming as well, but super cool to experience all of that.
No kidding. That's amazing. And now I'm gonna get a little personal, if that's okay.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
This past December, you went IG official with your girlfriend. I don't know if I'm gonna say her name right. So it's Kim Meilemans. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And she's also an Olympic athlete in skeleton from Belgium. And you guys met at the World Cup. Is that correct?
We met actually, well, my very first year competing, I was North America's Cup, so that's the lower circuit, and she was World Cup still at the time. And we actually met here in Calgary the very first time. Sorry, I don't know why I keep, there we go.
There you go.
We met the very first time there, and then we didn't actually start talking till the year after, where we had world champs in Whistler. So that was kind of the first interaction, and then we were just really connected right then and there, but never thought of anything for the next couple of years.
And then next couple of years, and you guys see each other again, and then you're just kind of like, I'm really liking this girl. There's a lot more to it. And were you also at that time in a relationship with somebody else, like another female, or no? This was kind of your first, if that can get.
Yeah. So we 2 seasons ago, well, like I said, we met my very first year of skeleton, and then we've always stayed in touch. Yeah. She at the time had her ex-girlfriend, and then I was dating men till then. We didn't think anything of it, and then we ended up spending a lot of time together. The first COVID season, just because we couldn't go anywhere. And so we really got to know each other. At the time, like I said, she had her ex-girlfriend and I was dating my ex-boyfriend. And then, we just got really close and started connecting more. And I think for me, I had never dated women before. I was never against it, but definitely never thought that was something for me. Yeah. And she knew from a young age that she was always into women. And for me, I think it was really, I had to take a step back and be like, okay, is this who I am? Is this what I actually want? So I think it was a tough period for her, where I told her, I just took her on a roller coaster, because I'd be like, oh yes, I'm in, and no, wait, I'm not. So that was a challenging part for both of us. But then
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say she had some issues with her ex-girlfriend, and I was having some problems with my ex-boyfriend, and it had nothing related to the two of us. I think both our relationships would have ended regardless of us dating each other or not. But yeah, and then she broke it off with hers, and I broke it off with mine. And then we got talking more, and then I had the time to kind of figure out, is this what I want? Because I'm not someone, I don't like to hide things. So if something is happening, I don't want to be hiding it. Especially, I didn't think it was fair to her for her to have to be hiding it as well. And so I really needed to sit down and figure out if that's who I was and what I liked. And when I decided that's what it was, things went a lot smoother for her and I. And then, I wanted really to tell my parents, and especially my family, my direct family, in person. And so when we decided we were actually officially dating in December, I was mid-season, I was gone. And so that was the thing, like I didn't want to have to hide it from everyone. I wouldn't see my parents until April-ish. So it would have been a long haul, let's just say. So I ended up having to message my parents about it and my brothers, but
they were good with it. They were totally
they were very accepting of it. And my brother was like, well, doesn't every female athlete? I was like, okay. So I mean, for me, it's I wouldn't say I'm only into women or only into men. Like I'm definitely open to, well, I consider myself bisexual. For Kim, she's lesbian. So I don't know, she's always known. And for me, it's a new journey. But I think it was really important for me to come out, and it was like a weight had lifted off my shoulders once I posted about it. And I haven't received any negativity towards it. Not that it would really matter or change me, but
years ago, my brother Daniel came out to me, and I remember I was driving, and we had a pet food store in Toronto at the time, and I just come back from New York, and he's driving the car, and he looks at me and he's like, yeah. And he goes back to driving. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my God, because we did boarding for dogs. I'm like, oh my God, we lost a dog. I'm just like, oh my God, what's happened? He looks at me again. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what? And he goes, so I'm gay. And I'm like, you could be pink with purple polka dots. I don't care. Like, as long as you're cool. Are you good? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't care. And then when my aunt found out, it was so funny. She's like, thank God we need at least one gay person in our family. So we just had this, but I could understand how daunting that would kind of be, because it, you know, obviously your family loves you, right? But you obviously hear other stories where people's family aren't as accepting, right? So I think it's really wonderful to be able to have that. And I think once you're able to kind of stand, because it's so hard when you really love being around somebody, if you think about how you feel, you want to share that with everybody. So to feel that you can't, or, I mean, luckily living in Canada where and some countries you can't even express that. So I can't imagine, you know, living in another country where it's illegal, or all of that kind of bullshit, where you can't really be who you are, but you have all these wonderful feelings for somebody, you can't share it. Because I know when I'm in relationships with somebody, you know, it's so hard not to be posting about them and, you know, being like, look at who I love, right? So it's so wonderful, I think, not only to be accepted that way, to also be able to shine light to other athletes who possibly are still nervous. And because there still is, I think there still is probably a little bit of stigma, maybe in the athlete world. And I'm not sure if you find that, or because I know they said this game, sorry, but this was one of the largest games with LGBTQ plus, I believe that were out, right? Correct. This is at least for the winter, right? For the winter games. Yeah. I believe summer there's far more, but the winter's not as much. So yeah, I imagine that would obviously give a lot of women or men the inspiration to be able to kind of be open and honest with who they really are.
For sure. I think it's definitely going in the right direction. Kim and I talk about this a lot, especially Kim is very involved in the LGBTQ plus community. So she always talks about how there are known gay, lesbians, whatever, in the Winter Olympic Games, and that just have that fear of coming out still. And they've known it for years, and a lot of people know it, but they are very afraid to come out. A lot of times it's they're afraid of losing sponsors because of it, and that kind of deal. So it's really sad that that's still a fear that they have to have. But yeah, a lot more came out these games. And I mean, once I came out, I think it was funny because I gave a lot of interviews during last season. Yeah. And you could tell people wanted to ask about it, but they were a little hesitant. And so after the first interview went out, where I was totally fine speaking about it. And that was the thing too. Until I was sure, I didn't want to be telling people, right? And then once I knew, I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, it was funny when the first one came out, then every other interview would start asking about it, you know?
I was thinking about this too. I'm like, you know, I mean, obviously you use your platform and you're very open and honest about who you are, which is, I think, another reason why people are inspired by you. But you still always want to be very, you know, cognizant of not pushing anybody's boundaries when they're talking about their personal life, because they might be like, I really don't want to talk about that. I don't want that to be my story. But at the same time, that story really does give others the ability to stand in their own story too, which is really empowering, not only for them, but also for yourself too, and for Kim too, to be able to be that inspiration to other athletes and young women and guys, right, around the world. So I mean, more vulnerable we are, the more other people will see themselves through our stories and be able to kind of get vulnerable themselves and stand kind of in who they really should be, really, in this journey. So
absolutely. Yeah, it was funny because, like I said, we haven't really got any negative comments or anything about it until, I think there was one post that Kim and I posted, and someone just commented like a puking face or something. And Kim and I weren't together at the time, and she sends me a screenshot. She's like, "Do we have our first haters?" So
that's when you know you've really made it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, we just take it as it is. And I mean, it's sad that it's still something that has to be talked about and asked about and stuff. But I mean, I'm hoping that a few years from now, that's not a thing anymore. And I do think it's come a long way. But there's definitely, I don't know if Kim and I talk about this too, because she's like, yeah, it's come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. And I think, I don't know, I'm just spoiled living in Canada. I think Canada and she even says when she comes to Canada, that's when she's the most comfortable being who she is. When I've been to Belgium, where she's from, I go to hold her hand. She's a little like,
oh, interesting.
a little held back by it in the beginning, just because she doesn't feel super comfortable. But yeah, she said Canada is the place where she feels the most comfortable and people are most nice and open about it all. And I do think maybe that's why things were a little bit easier for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've traveled all over the world, and there's definitely places that she's been like, okay, like standoff. We went to Seychelles, for example, and one of our stops was in Doha airport, and there we were like, we're friends, you know? So it's just, it's sad that that's still a reality in the world, but.
Yeah, well, my brother and his partner, my brother's in Oxford right now doing
Okay.
degree, and his partner is going to be meeting him, and they're going to travel through Europe. But I know Daniel had said to me before he wanted to go to China. There's other countries he really wanted to go to, but he also said too, there would be a fear of going there with Brian, his partner, right? And some of these other countries would be a little bit, you know, apprehensive. And it goes just the thought that you can't be expressed like who you are. We are in a way not spoiled, but we're very lucky to be in Canada, given all the stuff that we complain about all the time. But we are really, we do have a really great country, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for me that was also eye-opening in a sense that I never really thought twice of being like, oh yeah, that place would be really cool to visit. And then she's like, well, no, actually, I have no desire to go there because like you'll go to jail if they find out, or worse, you know? So it's sad that that's the reality of a lot of places in the world still. And yeah, it's something that people like us, I guess, have to still think about.
Yeah.
Can't just be like, oh, when we went to Seychelles, for example, we had to kind of Google and like, are we just friends here? Are we not? Like, what are we doing? So it's a little sad still. But I think we're hopefully moving in the right direction.
I agree with you. So let's talk about your other passion, nursing. So my gosh, you do a lot. Before we even say that, because, you know, I'm really blessed. I have 3 nurses in my family and 3 doctors. And, you know, what you guys have kind of done over the past, especially the past couple of years, I can't even begin to imagine the stress. You know, we think we're under stress as we've been under house arrest at home, having to, you know, watch the news. But you guys have kind of been in the thick of it. So I have such an enormous appreciation for what you guys are doing, especially lately when there was, like, you know, about a year or so, 8 months ago, and people protesting from the hospitals, like that just, like, that's the one place we don't protest all you want, but do not do it there.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm really firmly, so I don't usually talk politically, but that just drove me nuts. But nonetheless, so how long have you been in nursing? Right. And I had this with the gold being in the Olympics, obviously there must have been extra precautions. Were you worried? Did you take time off from nursing so you could just focus on the Olympics with the COVID situation? So.
Yeah. Well, I've been a nurse 4 years now.
It's almost like the same amount of time as, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So it's been a challenge in itself because so in 2017-18, when I got asked to do bobsled, I was going into my last semester. I just had my practicum to go to. And it was funny, actually, I still work with the lady who precepted me, or the nurse that precepted me. And I remember I had to take that semester off to do bobsled. And then because we didn't qualify, I was able to go back and graduate. So it was bittersweet, not making the games that year. But I know I came back and she was like, well, we were very confused because it's really hard so I did my preceptorship at the Children's Hospital here in Calgary. And she was like, well, I was very confused why you had all of a sudden like dropped out of it, because it's really hard to get a preceptorship assignment here. And once you get it, it's like people usually don't give up on it. Anyway, so I did, it's been 4 years, and I've pretty much started working, and I got hired. So I graduated in April, got hired in May, and then worked 6 months and then left. So then I left for 5 months. And then when I came back, it was kind of like having to relearn everything again. So nursing started taking off a little slow for me, in the sense that I'd be there, I'd work, I'd get comfortable, and then I'd leave for a few months, and then I'd have to come back and get comfortable and leave again. So I'm finally at a point where I'm comfortable coming back after 5 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I work at Children's Hospital, and then I also work at an adult hospital. Sorry, did you have a question?
No, go ahead. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been a challenge in and of itself. And then when COVID hit, it was kind of a mess in that no one knew what it was in the beginning. So everything was closed. Like we closed beds and no one was coming in. So we actually didn't have many patients in the beginning of COVID. And then once things were off, it was just a mess in the sense of every day was a new policy, new protocol with COVID. I also have just because I like adding things to my plate, I also have a travel nursing job. So that one's based off contract. So rural places around Canada in need of nurses will go reach out to this company. This company reaches out to their hired nurses. So I did 3 assignments in long-term care around Alberta. Wow. And that was like peak COVID. So they were in need of nurses because there was an outbreak. So yeah, I worked in peak long-term care COVID, helping out different facilities. And then I also worked at the hospital. So it's been, I think that's the biggest challenge for me, is finding a balance between training and working. I am pretty much in the summer full-time athlete, full-time work, and then in the winter full-time athlete. But yeah, I've been talking a lot I think after the games kind of things. Up until the games, you do everything and anything, and you sacrifice so much, and you're like, that's my mission, that's my goal. And so I think having the games past and realizing all the stress that I've been through, and I've had some health issues because of all the stress. And I think I start to realize everything that's been going on to it. So I think, I don't know if I can do it for another 4 years this way, let's just say. But yeah, it's just a challenge finding the balance between being able to work and financially being okay, and then also having the time to train and then compete, because when I'm gone, I don't make any income, right? So it's kind of, I'm working half the year for the full year. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge working during COVID, and then being away. So
you have the ability to, I mean, obviously given kind of your status and what you've been able to accomplish, have you had any sponsorships come through, or big companies that want you to, campaign for them, Wheaties, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I do have one company based out of Calgary, released. They're a CBD company, and they've been by my side since day one, kind of thing. But otherwise, unfortunately, no sponsors. It's just me and my federation. So my federation provides quite a decent amount. I'd say about 70% of my season is covered by them, but then the other 30% is on me, kind of thing. So it's just it's a challenge in the sense that in the summer I'm working to save up for the season. Then the season comes, you use it / more, then you come back, you pay off that debt, and then you try and save more for the next season. It's just a cycle. I went to Brazil after the games and did a bunch of PR and media and stuff in hopes of getting my name out there and being able to get those sponsors. So far, nothing has come out of it. There were a lot of promises, let's say, that were made, or suggestions. Nothing's come out of it yet. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'll take it season by season and see what we're able to do. But unfortunately, skeleton is a very expensive sport, mostly because the equipment itself is expensive, and then every week we're in a different country. So our tracks aren't in one place only, in one country only, in one city only. So that's the unfortunate part of it. And it's not a known sport, so companies don't really.
Sorry, would you move out here to BC, you think, or no?
See, I've thought about it before, but the thing is, I'm not there very often. Like, the only times I'm there would be preseason for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then postseason for 2 or 3 weeks. And then if there's ever a race there, we're there, right? So when the winter comes, we don't really have a home. Our home is our suitcase. We're gone every week. We're somewhere new. And so it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to move out there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. So we're going to do some fun questions now. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not racing down a mountain at top speed, head first?
I I mean, what I would like to do, I just love everything outdoor. So I really like paddleboarding, biking, anything outdoor. I love playing different sports. I think that's the one thing I miss most about not being an elite athlete, let's say. So I used to play volleyball, soccer, just do a lot of recreational stuff. I think like I did a lot of CrossFit, all that kind of stuff has to be put on hold right now because I'm 100% into skeleton and it's such a fast twitch thing. So one, we have to be careful with injuries. So a lot of opportunities, I guess, that I could have, I avoid just in the sense of avoiding injuries for skeleton, like skiing and snowboarding, for example. I would love to get into that, but it's a risk. I was playing soccer until I pulled my quad and then had to sit out of it. So then I was like, okay, probably shouldn't risk it.
Yeah.
So a lot of things is deciding the risk and if it outweighs the benefits. So I think that's one thing that I miss most about pre-skeleton days. But again, I mean, those will be back. So yeah, I just love being active. Anything. I love trying new sports, trying new things.
Actually, question I didn't ask you, what is the career length of somebody who does skeleton? Speaking of that, like how long does somebody, I mean, you probably would be able to do it for a while, I would think.
For sure. I think the cap off is honestly whenever your body decides they don't want to sprint fast in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because then, I mean, in skeleton, the more runs you have, the more experience you are, the better you'll be.
Yeah.
So the more years of experience you have, the better. And honestly, I think what stops most athletes is when you can't sprint fast anymore. It really depends on the nation, but there, like Kim, for example, she's been in it for, I think this is coming up on her 11th or 12th season.
Wow.
And then we have people who have been there for, oh my goodness, like at the last games, she was at, I think that was her 4th or 5th games. So yeah, there's all over the place. I was definitely, I think, one of the, let's say, least experienced there, but most people, I would say, go anywhere from 8 to 15 years in the sport.
Wow. That's
if not longer. Yeah, like Germans normally will start at a very young age. They will start at, I don't know, 13, 14.
Wow.
And a lot of them will have done luge before that. So luge athletes, like it's really cute to watch. They start at, I don't know, 7, 8 years old.
And that's when you're on your back, correct? Like, so
on your back, yeah, feet first.
I think I'd rather, if I had to do, I think I'd rather do the head so you could see what you're
absolutely
doing, right? This would just be like, oh dear God, get me down the hill.
Yeah, lugers are insane. Like those things go a little bit faster than us. Wow. And they have less control, and I just couldn't imagine. Yeah.
This guy, I don't think I could.
Yeah.
So what is one thing you would tell your 21-year-old self? Mind you're only like 28, so technically. So if you go back to your 21-year-old self, what is there you would tell yourself in particular?
I think, I mean, maybe find a career that you can do remotely.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That would definitely help me nowadays, but I don't know. I think just to always believe in what you dream, no matter how crazy it may seem. Like a lot of people ask me, like, did you see yourself making it? And I think the first couple of years of skeleton, like it was obviously a goal, but kind of very surreal. And it was all very surreal until it actually happened. But especially the first 2 years where I was like, like I'm competing against girls who have double, triple the experience I have. Yeah. And to make it to the games is crazy. And then
huge.
Once I got to the games, I was like, like so top 20 make the 4th run. And up until the season before, I hadn't made the top 20 in any world champs even. So I was like, top 20 would be surreal as well. And then to finish 13th. So I don't know. I think it's just always believe in yourself and do what you have to do if that's your goal, then do it, and don't underestimate yourself, I think.
Yeah, listen to the whisper and your good orderly direction. That's what I refer to God as, your good orderly direction, that inner It's kind of like with my brand too. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm listening to
Absolutely.
if I wasn't doing it, I know there's been times before I started the brand, I always wanted to do it so badly. And I'd see other people doing it. I was like, and it wasn't a jealousy thing. It was just like, you're not stepping into who you're supposed to be. And it was just this kind of, and that's the thing that actually keeps me out of bed every morning, or jumps me out of bed and makes me, because I'm like, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to do this, right?
Yeah,
So,
I have the motto I live by is everything happens for a reason, and I have it tattooed on my arm. But yeah, I really do believe that. And I think that no matter how shitty a situation might be, there's a reason for that, and something will come out of it, so
yeah, there's a lesson or a blessing. I think that's one of the things I heard once, right? And it is, if you, so I mean, in looking at things that way, that's one of we have 5 pillars at Erin Wellness, and it's the thoughts you think, the friends you keep. This is why we do this section too. Your daily movement, nutrition, and lastly, supplementation, right? So all of that stuff in play together really kind of brings health and wellness. But so last, what is next for Nicole? What's the next? So the Olympics coming up in Italy would be the next, or what happens next for you?
Ideally, that's the next step in 2026, I guess long-term goal.
Yeah.
I'm also in the midst of figuring out what I want to do, maybe career-wise. I mean, nursing, I won't say I will always do. I'm definitely still going to do it for a while. I love it. And it's just, I can't do it remotely. So I think from back in my bodybuilding days, I've always had a desire or interest, I should say, in nutrition and like biohacking stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm considering maybe going that route in addition to nursing. And that's something that I love, helping people. And I love being able to, like, just in my day-to-day life, when people come up to me and ask me about nutrition or whatever, I'm always someone who, I don't know if it's underestimates myself, but I don't like, unless I'm qualified, I don't like giving too many suggestions. And I don't feel like I don't want to give the wrong suggestion, let's just say. So I've always held back in that sense. But I think if I were to actually get educated and stuff, that could be something of interest to me. So that could be it's something I'm looking into. So maybe that's coming up as well. But yeah, short term, this summer is just going to be training and working as a nurse. And then coming up in August, September is when I'll be traveling again a little bit more for the beginning of the season. So
when does the season start? Is it like
November? And it'll actually be our first race for the first time in 3-4 years now. Will be in Whistler.
Oh
yeah, we're gonna have our first World Cup there.
You have to keep me. I'd love to come. I'd love to bring Michaela and watch it. That would be really
amazing.
amazing.
You guys should. November 27th, I believe, is the day.
November 27th. All right.
Yeah.
Well, and then where can people find you? Because I want people to be able to find you and follow you and kind of follow your journey.
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. So it's Nicole, Nicole, and then it's a double underscore. So __, and then Silveira. So Silveira.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting with me today. And everybody go give her a follow, and we're going to be cheering you on as your career continues to go. And I have a very strong feeling you'll be in Italy. So it'll be neat to be able to cheer you on. And I would love to come up in November and watch you race. That would be awesome. So
yeah, it would be awesome to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story and taking your time with me. I know your time is valuable, so I really, really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for the invite.
And then next month, stay tuned, we have another guest. So every month on Friends You Keep, we have a woman doing exceptional, inspiring things. So thanks, Nicole.
Amazing. Thank you.
Bye.